basically, should we start?
Yes, sir. So I think this duties for petrol and diesel also, government has imposed this advalent basis.
You know,
That's why
sometimes there are notifications that some of the items becomes a specific duty, sometimes item becomes, that also government do. So that's basically depends on the situation, the international price and many things. So, but the idea is government wants to maximize the revenue, you know, like revenue and to meet other things, you know, unless they are WTO compliant. But WTO has no problem whether you have duties or ad valorem or specific. See, ultimately you do it like this or that. For WTO it doesn't matter, but it matters because of the behavior of the people. Because obviously businessmen cannot be honest, you know. So to ensure that even if they are dishonest, they don't make it that the Indian government lose money. So they keep on changing. So it is really not a big problem with the WTO. It is more a problem with the people who are importing, right? So ad valorem and specific is kind of, you know, like options the Indian government has. So item to item, these options they exercise, either ad valorem option or specific. But they will notify it.
What is the highest ad valorem in case of India?
Import duty is presently the highest is 28.
28%.
Highest.
Basic duty.
Basic. And minimum is 0. Like laptops is 0. Many of the items.
Exempted items.
Not exempt. 0 means, but there are other duties. Basic duty is 0. Exempt means duty free.
Duty.
Right? So exempt, they don't use the word exempt.
Duty free.
They say 0. Today is 0, tomorrow it will be 2%. Like gold it was 0. Then in Chidambaram made it 10%. Right? So when India was facing a lot of problems, at the fag end of UPA government, they brought it to 10%. Like that. So they will never use word exempt. Never. Custom will never use because these are all temporary. 0%. How long it is 0%? Laptop is 0% because they want to educate India. Because India is number 1 in the world in IT. So they will never have, probably they will never have higher duty on laptops or computers, computer parts. So that it is available cheaply. So people can really do better in IT field. That is the idea. So that is the case. So and compound mix sometimes sometimes they have a discretion that we will, for this item we can either impose ad valorem or we can impose specific or a combination of it. Right? Or a combination of it. For example, scrap can be of different categories, you know, scrap also. Right? Like brass scrap. A brass scrap can be, like for example, iron scrap. Iron scrap can be the general scrap. It can be rails. When it is rail, you know, the old rail lines, it comes from Russia. A lot of scrap come. Now old rail lines are as good as, I mean, how much wastage will be there when you put in the furnace? The rail is one category of scrap, iron scrap. Rail, the used one, right? So that scrap is one of the best. So that price will be higher for the rail, right? So what custom can do, for example, even if they have a tonnage price for iron scrap, they can say that this rail quality is from Russia, so it's very Russian quality they know is high, you know. So what they will do? They'll say, okay, for the Russian quality, we have 50% we will apply on tonnage basis, 50% we will apply on the price. So, and Russian price in the government has all the information, right? So nobody can really cheat. So they will see case to case. But all these things will be notified in proper notification. That for these items, there is a mixed duty, there is a specific duty, there is a ad valorem. Mix is very rare. In India, it is not very common, right? So either it is ad valorem or that is the basic. But then there are other duties. Anti-dumping duty, which I told you. Again, it depends on the complaints coming from the industry, domestic industry. They will say these goods are very cheap. Like for example, shrimp industry is facing this problem. US local industry, the shrimp catchers who catch shrimp from their coast, they always say, Indian shrimp, there is some problem here. It's how it can be so cheap. I mean, the normal price of per kg price of shrimp in US is something like $5-6 per kg. In India, it is less than 1.5. Right? So look at the difference. Now, Indian people say that, do you really think that Indian government can give subsidy? So they say that there is a subsidy. And these kind of complaints have been going on since 1998. In 1998, they started investigation. The market crashed, Indian shrimp market. Because shrimp market is not very good in Indian market. India doesn't eat so much of shrimp. It is mainly exported. So the moment there is some investigation on anti-dumping duty in US, prices crashed down. In fact, in 2004, when this first investigation started, the second stage of investigation started on anti-dumping duty from US, price came down from 280 rupees per kg to 120 rupees. Now, the Indian people said, if there is a government subsidy, why the price will come down from 280 to 120? Suppose there is a subsidy and US started the anti-dumping duty investigation in US, and probably you will go to WTO also with a complaint. Or in fact, in this case, US will not go to WTO. India will go. That US is imposing anti-dumping duty because we will be affected. Now, the shrimp industry, Indian shrimp industry said that if there is a subsidy, why the price will crash down from 280 rupees to 120 rupees in the local market? But they say, we don't know. How can we sell it so cheap? They don't understand that in India, our fishermen, you know what kind of boats they use, and the fishermen of US what kind of boat they use. So their overheads are very, very big, very, very big. Our fishermen are very poor people. They are happy with small margins, but those people are very all educated people. Fishermen there. Obviously, it will be costly, right? So they don't understand that. So they will always say So India also do that. China has faced anti-dumping duty all over the world. Whether it was true or not, whether there was a subsidy or not, we don't know, right? But that time China was not the member of WTO. Now China is member of WTO, and these kind of cases are less. So Chinese goods are also like, if it is quality good, price will be high. If it is bad quality, price will be low. It's like that, right? So nowadays there are not so many complaints. But yes, toy industry is wiped out from India because of China. You know that, right? So dumping is the sale of merchandise in export market at unfair price. Import charges equal to the dumping margin are limited. Then countervailing duty. Countervailing duty is basically to countervail excise duty, local excise duty. Suppose goods are coming from China. Suppose bicycles are coming. And I told you, whatever is coming in the import, there are no hidden charges, obviously. Because government has already given all direct and indirect taxes. Anywhere goods are coming. That's why international market prices are cheap. WTO have no problem if you give back whatever you have taken. So obviously anything which is coming is not having any excise, local excise of China, not having any sale tax of China, not having any kind of tax is not there. So that's a very, very base price, obviously. So even after you have put the basic duty at Velarama or specific, or anti-dumping duty is a case to case, so you can always have a countervailing duty which is equal to the excise duty in your local market. Otherwise what will happen? Those goods will wipe out the market, the domestic market. Like for example, what has happened? On Diwali time, your Chinese LEDs and everything comes. So Indian market is totally wiped out. Right? But there is a countervailing duty. There is a countervailing duty. So whatever is the excise duty Indian government is charging for the domestic manufacturers, that thing is there. Like for example, the biggest item is cars, automotive cars. In India there is a very high excise duty on automotive products, right? The passenger cars or commercial vehicles, right? So countervailing duty is one of the highest for the imported cars or like that. Okay? Whatever may be the basic duty. Now, for example, in case of laptop, just tell from your own logic, will there be big countervailing duty on laptops? Suppose we are importing laptops and the specific and ad valorem is almost zero, right? Zero. So, will there be any, do you think that there will be countervailing duty? What is your opinion? No, why? Why there will be no countervailing duty on the laptops? Because nobody manufactures laptop.
There is hardly any manufacturing.
There is hardly any manufacturing. So when there is no hardly any manufacturing, there is no fear. There is no fear of the domestic industry dying because there is nobody manufacturing. There is no competition. So when even if there is some excise duty, countervailing duty may not be there. See that is one reason why Indian government, or in fact most of the government in the world, they have customs and excise the same department. You know, when we say customs and excise, why? Because customs and excise are also applying excise duty to the domestic items and they are applying these duties to the imported items also. So, the moment they increase excise duty, they will increase the countervailing duty automatically because it's the same department. If it is a different department, then there is a government process, it will go to parliament, it will go do this thing. So, by the time countervailing duty will be levied, the industry will be wiped out. That's why from the very beginning we have excise and customs at the same department because of this countervailing duty. Then you have got other kind of import duties which we will be discussing tomorrow when we go deeper into import process. Okay?
So countervailing duty, if it is to be there, then it is necessarily be equal to excise duty or can be equal to?
No, countervailing as such is for that only. Countervailing.
Just to match. So
The
it is
excise.
Same one, no? Figure wise same.
See, it is
If it is there.
if it is there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, these are the different participants. When we talk of the procedure and documentation, we will be dealing with foreign purchasing agents, export brokers, export merchants, export management companies, export distributors, export commission representative, cooperative exporters, freight forwarders, manufacturers, export representative. These are the private players. Then there are government players like RBI, Director DGFT, Director General of Foreign Trade. Then there is EPCs, Export Promotion Councils. Then there are Chamber of Commerces. Then there is bank. You know,
Shipping ministry.
then shipping ministry you really don't deal, but you deal with shipping companies. Then you deal with insurance companies. Then you deal with factoring companies, right? Then probably you deal with CHAs, custom house agents. You deal with C&F agents. That is mentioned here, freight forward, right? So there are so many participants in this whole game. So many participants are there, right? And you probably have, you know, as I told you, the Chamber of Commerce also. Then there is something called ECGC, Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. So we'll be talking about these organizations, what they do, like what ECGC do. I mean, you need to be aware of all these people, how they are dealt with, what are the documents which are used, and what is their role, right? And within the banks, there are different types of banks. One is the negotiating bank, one is the advising bank, then there is the issuing bank, then there is a confirming bank, you know. So this whole export-import procedures has so many different participants which need to be understood. And that is the reason I am doing this warm-up, so that you understand the basic, then it will become very easy for you to understand the whole procedure. Organizing for exporting in the manufacturer's country. Export can be handled as a part-time activity performed by domestic employees in a company. It can be through an export partner also. Or it can be also import partner. Through an export department, within an international division. Or it can be multi-divisional companies, each possibility exists for each division. Like different divisions, they have their own division. I mean, depends. How do you organize? That will depend on your own structure. It will depend on your own strategy. It will also depend on the availability of talent with you. Suppose the whole organization you have very few people who understand export-import business, so you will have a separate division, obviously. But then when you have many people, so every division you find somebody who is conversant with the export-import procedure and documentation, you can have in every department. So you can organize accordingly. Then you can have direct market representations, advantages, control and communication. We will not go deeper into all these. I'm again just doing the warm-up. Representations by independent intermediaries, advantages best for the situation with small sales volume. So depending on your volume of sale also depend on the nature of your product. Also depends. And it also depends on the nature of the markets which you are targeting. They are not one factor, they are not two factors, there can be multi-factors. Okay. How do you, if you organize? Then export financing and method of payments. This is one of the most crucial part of this understanding of export import, that how the payments are made. In a very layman's understanding, the payment can be either done advance, you can pay advance, or an importer can pay you advance. You can export the goods. This is one way of paying. Second can be that you supply the goods and wait for the payment. Third can be you keep on sending the goods every month. There is some account going on. You can do that consignment basis. Fourth can be that there is some way you want to find out, because all other ways you find a risk. Don't you think? There is a risk. Suppose the buyer pays you advance. Even if you are honest, probably you become complacent because money has already come. So you are not able to supply within 1 month, and suppose you supply in 2 months, and by the time you supply the goods, it is of no use. So he's lost the money. Risk is there. Or suppose you supply the goods, waiting for, thinking that the buyer will pay, and buyer may be actually honest, but for some reason he is angry with you. For some reason he is feeling that the color is not exactly as what he has ordered. So probably he will not pay you. So what do you want to do? You want to find out a solution for that. So what do? You involve a bank in between, third party, right? And that actually from the banking language it is called documentary credit. Documentary credit. But in a layman language, what we use the word is called LC, letter of credit. The technical word for this is actually the documentary credit. Why documentary credit? Because what bank does, bank only deals with documents and money. Bank do not deal with goods. Bank will never visit your factory and never will see your goods, or will never visit buyer to see the goods. He says that these are documents, this is my system, you have to go by the system. I have no time to see your goods. I do not deal with goods. I deal with documents. And I am giving you credit that you provide these documents and you will be paid. So that's why it is called documentary credit. And what we say, from the normal language, what we say, letter of credit, basically, LC. This is a safety for both buyer and for the seller, right? So the most common method of payment is letter of credit. And as far as the financing part is concerned, in financing part I'll give you a little bit of idea. Based on the letter of credit, you can get almost at the most 80% of the loan from the bank on the basis of the letter of credit. As per the rules, bank is obliged to give you 80% the moment LC is opened, right? If the LC is accepted, everything, I'll explain to you what is the different type of LC. The LCs are irrevocable, payable at site, confirmed LC, or LC from first class bank. Bank is obliged to give you 80% of the loan at concession, at an interest rate which is very low, to the tune of 3-4%. Why 3-4%? Because that is the international price. The other countries people also get it for 3-4%. So Indian government has this facility that you can also get the loan at 3-4%, which otherwise how will you compete with the other countries, right? So it is called pre-shipment credit or packing credit, which you can get, but that is maximum 80% of the LC that you can get. Now that is one way of financing. Second is, suppose your letter of credit is not payable at site. Suppose it is not payable at site. It is to be paid in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, right? Deferred payment. It is not payable at site. It is payable at certain time, or it is also called usance time. It's a usance LC. It's not a side. It's not a side LC. Side means payable at site immediately. You supply the documents and you get paid. That is one way. That is the best LC. But in the negotiation, you are not able to get it. You are able to get 30 days, 60 days, like that. Maximum allowed is 180 days by RBI. RBI comes into picture. Maximum allowed is 180 days. Now, so once you have supplied the goods, you have given the documents, so bank will say, give my loan back. Obviously, pre-shipment credit is over, right? But you will say, sir, my payment has not come. How will I pay? Because your payment has not come. Because it is not payable at site. So bank will say, okay, don't worry. I will give you a second set of loan. What is that? It is called post-shipment credit. Because the moment you supply the goods, what is the meaning of this? The main document is bill of lading. The main document is bill of lading. What is bill of lading? It's a proof that you have loaded the goods on the ship, right? It means shipment has taken place. The moment you supply bill of lading, your pre-shipment credit is over. Now you have to go for the second phase of the loan. If it is a usance LC, Indian government has that facility also, right? So you can convert that loan from pre-shipment credit to post-shipment credit. There will be some difference of the interest rate. So that will be available to you. That loan will be available to you till you get the money. So this is another method of financing. There is a third method of financing. That is called bill discounting. You have heard about it, bill discounting. Bill discounting means, suppose for some reason you cannot get a post-shipment credit, and it is a confirmed LC, but it is a usance LC. So what do? You tell to the bank, sir, I need money, I don't know. My money will come in 90 days. Now bank will say, what is the problem? Money will come in 90 days, no problem. So he will calculate the interest, normal interest, based on 15%, 16%, he will calculate. He will say, okay, I will give you 3% less. Take the money, no problem. Take it now. So he is doing a bill discount. Because LC is there, money will come automatically. So he will give you the money of the LC, cutting some 2%, 3% depending on what are the calculation. His own calculation. So that is called bill discount. So you have got different methods of financing which you can do, right? Pre-shipment credit, post-shipment credit, bill discounting, and you can also do factoring. There is something called factoring. Factoring means there is instead of involving the bank, because you think that bank is charging too much. His bill discounting is 3%. It should not be 3%, it should be 1.5%. Right? You think so. So there should be somebody else who should give you bill discounting of a different type. Right? So maybe cheaper. So that will be some third party or some private company or some other financial institution. So these are called factoring institutions. So what you are doing? You are using your LC to factor it. Right? You are transferring the LC to somebody else and getting the money at a better rate than bank. You can do that. That is called factoring. Okay. So you have different methods of financing this whole game.
So what is the role of this advising bank and issuing bank? Because we,
I'll explain to you, but I'll just give you a small brief about it. Now, when you have involved bank in documented credit, you have involved the bank. Now, the most convenient bank for the buyer is the bank within their country. Obviously. Right? And the most convenient bank for you is the bank in your country. Right? Correct? Now, bank will issue a documented credit based on some commitment of the buyer only, no? See, buyer will say, what buyer will say? Sir, I want to import handicraft items from India. Right? And I have to pay for this amount, for this handicraft item, 40 lakh rupees. Right, sir? I cannot give advance to the Indian party because if I give advance, it is a risk for me. So he will go to the bank, his local bank. Especially that bank where he has an account. A bank which knows him,
which he preferred.
which he will prefer and which knows him also. His credit history is there, obviously. So he will tell the banks, sir, I want to involve you. I am doing for the business for the first time in India. Or even if I am not doing first time, I am not very sure because it's a business. I don't want to give advance. So please open a documented credit. He will tell you his bank, no? Right? So that becomes your issuing bank. Why? Why it is issuing bank?
Issuing bank for us, for the exporter?
For the whole game, for the whole payment game, documented credit is originating from buyer's country. So suppose you are an importer, so you will go to your bank. In which that case, your bank is a issuing bank. So the bank who issues the letter of credit or documented credit is called issuing bank. Because on the request of the buyer, he is issuing the letter of credit or documented credit. Correct? So that becomes an issuing bank. Now, when you open a letter of credit, there is now he has got two options. This documented credit has got a name of the exporter. He is an Indian exporter, handicrafts. Name is there, address is there, everything is there.
So all the clauses are there.
All the clauses are there, which are very technical in nature.
Yeah.
Very technical. Now, bank has two options. No, I am not saying technically how it happens. No, logically I am talking. Now, bank has two options. One is to advise the Indian exporter of handicrafts directly from abroad that I am opening this LC to you, documented credit, right? And supply these documents and I will pay you.
Directly to exporter.
Logically, it is possible. See, you are involving one bank, third party. You are not involving a set of banks. You are involving one bank. Because to bring the safety, only one person is okay, na? So when there is a fight between two villages, why you have to, probably you don't need to involve the sarpanch of both the villages. Probably you will like to involve sarpanch of a third village, only one sarpanch. Who will take the guarantee, who will be a guarantor. So dispute will be settled, right? So you probably don't need many banks to involve. So probably you involve only one bank, right? So this option is very logical. That issuing bank from abroad to the Indian exporter, he sends us direct communication. But there is a problem. What is the problem? Can you tell me what is the problem in doing that? Suppose the issuing bank opens the letter of credit, documented credit, and straight away send it to the exporter. What is the problem? What can be the problem?
Even bank is not sure whether goods have been exported or
That document
that document evidence
will tell, because he is asking for document, huh? Bill of lading, he is asking for invoice, he is asking for packing list, certificate of origin. He is asking, so unless he gets those documents, he will not pay. It's a conditional payment, right? Issuing bank, conditional payment, conditional commitment to pay, conditional guarantee, right? And what is the condition? Provide these documents. And bank is expert. He knows that whether these are genuine document or not, right? But what is the problem? there are two problems. One is the documentary credit is a very technical document. It is not logical that a normal exporter will understand everything, technical language. They will not understand. You know, the clauses and all. It's very technical. It is under UCP, Uniform Customs Practices 500 or 600, which is issued by ICC, International Chamber of Commerce, based in Geneva. So, okay. It's very technical in nature. First of all, you not understand. Second, if he sends the document directly to the issuing bank, since it is coming from abroad, there is a very strong possibility that they may be these may be fake documents or manipulated documents. It is possible because a foreign bank is in a different culture, different environment, and for example, is a US bank. US bank will be in a different mindset, so he will see more than the documents. He has to see the person, whether what kind of person he is. You know, like is he a criminal person or somebody? You know, see, when you go to a bank, do they check the note very, very carefully? He looks at first. He will look at you, whether this person can give you a fake note or not. First, they will look at you. Then, secondly, they will do a double check, right? So that is another problem. If you involve a local bank of that country, you can at least trust the bank. Why? Because that bank will have some relationship with the foreign bank. चोर चोर तो आपस में भाई होते हैं ना, भाई दो चोर तो एक दूसरे पे ट्रस्ट कर ही सकते हैं ना. So that bank will have more trust in the local bank than the exporter. Because exporter is a client. Client can do anything, right? But bank will not do because bank to bank dealing take place in many ways. So you can be 80-90% sure there will be no hanky-panky, right? So they have to involve a local bank, and that bank becomes your advising. So what happens? The LC is advised not directly by the issuing bank, it is advised by a local bank. Correct? I hope it is clear. So this is how a documentary credit works. Okay? So you can see here, first there is a contract between the buyer and the seller. There is a contract. See, the whole transaction starts with the contract. What is the contract means? With your marketing efforts, you have got an order. You have got an order from a foreign party. The Indian exporter of handicrafts has got an order for 40 lakh rupees. Now this order is, how is this order? In a very practical method, what happens? What the Indian handicraft exporter will do, he will say that this is my price and this is the details, quotation or whatever it is, and buyer will say okay, that's okay. Send me the performance invoice. He will ask, send me the performance invoice. Now what is the performance invoice? Performance invoice is a advance invoice, commercial invoice, which you will actually make later. Because what is the invoice? Invoice is a summary of the whole game. Summary means what is the goods, what is the unit price, what is the total price, what is the originating port of shipment, what is the destination port, what are the terms of delivery, FOB, CIF, Incoterms. That is, invoice is that. So what the first thing you will do, send me a performance invoice, which means the same thing. But instead of the word invoice, it is written not invoice, it is written performa invoice, which means like a dummy or like a rehearsal, which the invoice will be the main document, in future. So you make me now the order has not been signed. So you send a performa invoice. So now after the buyer receives the performa invoice, he has two options. One is to sign on the performa invoice, okay, order, and send a copy by fax. This is one way. Very simple way. Easy, direct, everything is fine. But if you are dealing for the first time, you say, no, sir. I cannot accept this order like this. Let us sign a contract with different clauses, like MOU. That there are two parties, one is the buyer, one is the seller. This buyer will supply these goods, this is the description of the goods, this is the quality, so all these documents will be required. You will open an LC, and in LC you will ask for these documents. So हाँ सर मैं उसमें अपडेट में हूँ. Okay. So he will sign, go for a full-fledged contract. 40 lakh rupees. We are doing business for the first time, right? So you will say no, sir. Performance signature is not okay. Let us sit down and sit down means it can be on video conferencing or whatever you can do. You need not go there. Like you can have a contract, get it, whether I know you or whatever, you can have a contract, and you can even write who will be the issuing bank, who will be the advising bank. You can even write that to avoid any complication. There is no problem. Why not do the homework? Do everything, right? Have Incoterms, have arbitration clause if there is a dispute, whether the arbitration will take place in US or arbitration will take place in India. You can even write the jurisdiction of the arbitration. You can do that. You can have force majeure clause also, right? You can have the payment terms also, and you can also write if there is the amendment in LC, who will pay for the amendment. You can write everything. It is better. Nobody stops you. So ideally there should be contract. Ideally there should be contract. It should not be purely on the signature on the performance invoice. Although performance invoice signature is also legally a contract actually. Because every time you don't want to have a contract, you can always say, okay, performance invoice signed, terms and condition as per contract, number so and so, dated so and so, ugly contract. You can do that also, right? Instead of making a fresh contract, you can do that also. Okay, and you can also use another word for that. Instead of performance invoice, same thing. You can make it. You can name it indent. You can name it indent also. Indent is also a contract, right? It can be indent, it can be performance invoice, it can be a full-fledged contract. But all these are actually basically they are contract. Okay, clear? So the first step is a contract. Second is the buyer goes to issuing bank and he fills a form to open a document credit. It is called instruction to the bank. The instruction form. In this he writes, sir, this is the credit amount I want to open. Sir, these are the documents which I require. I also require GSP certificate of origin because I will save on duty. Sir, I also require quality certificates from SGS quality certificate. Sir, I also require insurance certificate because it is a CIF contract. In CIF contract, insurance has to be paid by the seller. So obviously he will ask for that. Sir, I also require freight certificate because in CIF contract, the sea freight is also to be paid by the seller. Depending on the Incoterms, whether it is FOB, whether it is C&F, whether it is CIF, documents will change. Correct? Don't worry, I will talk about Incoterms later so you will understand. So, depending on the delivery terms and payment terms, the contract will vary. Documents will vary. So, buyer will fill this form, go to the bank, give this form to the bank, which is it's a proper document. It's a legal document, which is the instruction to the bank. And based on the instruction to the bank, why it is important document? Because if there is any dispute later on with the bank also, bank will say, I don't know, this is the instruction I got. Bank will not talk about this. Can you tell me why? Bank, see, basically LC is based on what?
Performance
Or this. So you will say to the bank in the instruction, the LC should mention that this LC is as per this contract number so and so. Bank will say no, I will not do it.
No, sir, we are exporting
Very rare.
Bangladesh.
Very rare.
In every LC they were.
They write the contract number.
Yes, they says that LC conditions, all the conditions, terms and conditions will be as per the performance number so and so, dated so and so. It is written.
It is very, very rare. As per UCP 600, the latest, it is very, very clear in the UCP. Try to discourage the buyer to write this reference. You know why? Because once LC is opened, the matter is between the bank and the seller. It is no more between the buyer and the seller. Because the money has to be paid by not buyer. Money has to be paid by the bank. So why the bank will be liable for a contract between you and the buyer? Why will he involve buyer in this? If any dispute happens in future, so if there is a reference of this, don't you think there will be a problem for the bank? Because the contract is that document, even the bank does not have that document, and he has nothing to do with that document.
Also, when this voter is filling this form, then he might have attached this performance.
Okay, fine, attached. Will you? First of all, it will not be original; it will be some copy. No, that mess up is not by the bank. If it is a good or bad or not bad, it is as good as you. As the buyer is, as good the buyer is, the contract will be. Because contract can be anything under the sun, a contract between two parties can be anything under the sun, right? So why all these that mess up which you have done? Why the bank will involve in legal problems? Why will? Now, because LC itself is the contract, but it is a contract between the issuing bank and the beneficiary. In the banking language, an exporter is a beneficiary. They never say he is the exporter. They will say beneficiary. Why? Because he is beneficiary of this credit amount. They use technical language, na?
The exporter will get the benefit.
Obviously, the moment he supplies all these documents, he gets the money. Bank will not ask the buyer before paying the money, because it's a undertaking, definite undertaking by the bank, which is conditional. But in nowhere in the condition it is mentioned that buyer has any influence. Buyer cannot do anything. It is irrevocable. This is irrevocable, definite undertaking by the bank, but it is conditional. Conditional what means these documents has to be applied. So where is the question of contract? So contract is just, that's why contract has no meaning in the export business. But contract is good for maintaining good relationship with the buyer. You can always say, sir, please don't do this. Your LC is wrong, sir. You had asked for 6 documents, but in the contract we had mentioned only 5 documents. These are the documents. Why have you included the 6 documents? So now the problem is LC is already open. So amendment will take place, and minimum charges for amendment will be $500 or $400. So we'll say, sir, as per the contract, we had asked for only these 5 documents. You are asking 6. So it is mistake from your side, sir. So we will say, yes, I made a mistake. I filled out this form. Okay, I will pay. Because it's a mistake by the buyer, right? So that is the only use of this contract. Otherwise, it has no meaning. So UCP 600, Uniform Customs and Practices of all the foreign exchange dealers. They don't call bank. All these issuing bank, advising bank, they are all foreign exchange dealers. FEDI, Foreign Exchange Dealer Association of. It was in India, but then you have a FEDI for the international ones. So it's a uniform customs practices under UCP 500 or UCP 600. Under UCP 500, okay, you are right. In 500, this was not mentioned. The referencing was very common. But now, latest UCP 600, it is very clear mentioned. Discourage buyer to write the reference about this contract. It is not illegal. In India, UCP 500.
So because we
Going
are
on.
supplying this in Bangladesh, and in every LC there is written as per its performance number so and so.
But it is depends on the bank actually. But it is not. It is discouraged. Because ultimately legal power will be of the bank. And you are talking of a document which is no concern of the bank actually. There is no concern. Now bank is given an undertaking, conditional undertaking. Now it's a new contract. Basically, this credit is a new contract. It supersedes this contract. So why should it mention? Obviously.
Between bank and beneficiary.
And then there is another problem. I'll tell you there is another problem. The moment you give a reference of this, then where is the protection of the beneficiary? Tell me.
No, the performer invoice is issued by beneficiary.
Wait. Performer invoice, right? Now, in the smartness, suppose the buyer has already put some manipulation in this. So, if there is a reference of this contract, when the documents come to issuing bank and the payment has been made, now this document will be sold to the buyer. The issuing bank has to sell this document to recover the money. The buyer will say, sir, these documents are not okay. It is as per this contract and this contract says this. Bank will say, oh, yaar, your mess up, I am the sufferer. Correct? Because, see, why the bank is concerned with your contract? For the bank, this sacrosanct contract, this is also a contract. This contract is between the issuing bank and the buyer. This contract is between the beneficiary through advising bank. So already there are two contracts. Why the bank will go to the third contract? Why should? If your bank is doing, there may be some specific reason. Because Bangladesh, there is a problem. I'll tell you later about it. Because if I go deeper into that, I'll definitely explain to you. There is a problem about Bangladesh, which I know. I have also faced those problems. So probably that's why they are writing. But normally they don't write. They will specifically say, sir, don't give any reference, no performance, no contract, nothing. It is between you and the buyer. You and the beneficiary. I'm not concerned. Right? Obviously. But ultimately he has to sell. Those documents has to be sold. Right? If he refuses to buy, then situation has changed. He no more want the goods. He will not buy. Right? Although there is margin money, he will take some margin money. If the credit rating is very high or there is a overdraft limit, then maybe he will not take any margin money. Otherwise, bank will already have some 10%, 20%, 30%. And if the bank does not know the buyer, he can ask for 100% margin money. Right? Bank knows his safety. But the legal problem, they will not like to enter it. Hello? Yeah. No. Yeah.
What we understand is that any documentary credit or LC is an agreement between the issuing bank and the seller through the beneficiary bank, and this credit
Advising bank. Right.
Advising bank or beneficiary bank.
Yeah, sure. Correct.
And this credit application itself is an agreement between the buyer and the issuing bank.
Yeah.
So whatever the terms defined in the export contract, that issuing bank can ask to the buyer that please mention in those credit application itself.
See, this issuing bank has nothing to do with this. I'll tell you why. Very simple thing. That's a legal document between the seller and the buyer. If there is any discrepancy here, then seller will contact the buyer. Sir, you have made a mistake. The instructions are not as per the contract. That is not a concern of the issuing bank. No. That's why he has a documentary proof.
Yeah.
That don't come to me. I will make the amendments, but I will ask for the charges. I will make the amendments. So in amendment there are two losses. One is the money loss, second is the time loss also. So why issue bank does not have that time to get into this trouble of, because contract can be very weird contract. Sometimes they are legally also they look very absurd. Can bank afford to do that? See, seller and buyer is not a legal entity. They are private companies. Right? And neither he is a professional nor he is a professional. So there is a 90% chance that even this contract will be unprofessional. Actually, performance invoice is the most weird document actually. Because it doesn't say anything, it only says that this is the item, this is the price. So why that such a highly unprofessional document, why the issuing bank will get into all this? It's a proper legal professional organization. He will go for this because it is well formatted. This form is well formatted by whom? By the issuing company, by the legal department. But this contract is not by the legal department. You got it? It is not a vetted document. So UCP 600 very clearly says You tell no. But if there is a very genuine reason of the buyer to give the reference of this contract, very genuine, with the consent of the seller, then only you. What is happening, I will tell you later. Bangladesh is a problem. Bangladesh have 14 banks, private banks. First of all, they are not first class banks. So I will tell you this concept of first class banks. Where confirmation is required, where confirmation is required. Bangladesh banks are not first class banks, and they are very shady banks. Very shady banks. That's why government had to go for SBI branch. And RBI always says that if you are dealing with Bangladesh, your LC should be from SBI, not the local bank of Bangladesh. When the LC is from SBI for the export purpose, right, it is Indian bank, then you can always have reference. There is no problem. Right? And I'll discuss with you, there may be some other reason also. But it is very unprofessional to write a whole invoice number or anything in the LC. Internationally, it is not okay. Within India, Bangladesh, maybe it is happening. Right? Okay. It's okay. I mean, 3 years back it was very common. But not today. It is happening for Bangladesh for some reason, because of the legacy reason or some reason. And one of the reasons I will discuss with you.
Maybe case to case basis, they were.
Not really case, just a practice maybe. Maybe just a practice. Or probably these banks are not using 600, UCP 600 at all. They are totally going as per the UCP 500. Right? That is also.
Maybe.
It is also there. Some old bank or old practices there. Right? Okay. So this is the point. Now, based on the instructions, LC instructions, the LC recommended credit is open and advised through the advising bank. This bank is in the country of the seller. This bank is in the country of the buyer. Now it is advised to the. Now this bank asks the seller, give me the acceptance letter that this LC is acceptable. If the seller finds, no, he is a seller, but from the bank point of view, he is a beneficiary. If the beneficiary accepts the LC, it means all the terms and conditions are satisfactory. But if he says, no, sir, I will not accept it, there is a problem. That is not the concern of advising bank or the issuing bank. Now it is between the seller and the buyer. If the LC is not acceptable, it is not a concern. Because they have already taken LC opening charges. They have already made the money. And they have already taken the advising charges. So they are not bothered. Right? They have already taken the money. Now it is up to the seller whether to accept or not to accept. If the seller accepts, then he will start making the goods. If he doesn't accept, then seller will contact the buyer. Sir, there is a discrepancy in the LC, I will not accept it. We agreed for these documents and you have added another document. Or you asked for the certificate of origin, GSP, but in the contract we had agreed the certificate of origin will be ordinary. Why are you asking GSP? Because GSP is a costly document, more costly. Ordinary certificate of origin is very cheap, but GSP is costly. So he can always say. But buyer will say, okay, maybe I made mistake in contract or whatever it is. So then it will be a discussion between the seller and the buyer. And probably seller will say, okay, I will provide you GSP, but then you have to compensate me for the extra amount, obviously, right? Or there may be genuine mistake by the buyer. So amendment will be, he will ask for another form, he will fill with the amendment. And some amount, $500, $400, whatever, amendment charges will be paid by buyer if the mistake is of the buyer at that stage. Because ultimately buyer wants goods. If the seller do not accept the LC, he is already paid issuing charges, he is already paid advising charges. So who will be the loser? The buyer will be the loser. Right? So LC has to be accepted by the seller. Once LC has been accepted by the seller, now it is between the issuing bank and the seller. Because money will be paid by the issuing bank. The buyer is out of the business. He is no more in the scene. He is out. Once LC has been accepted. Now it is a contract between the seller and the bank. So what seller will do? seller will prepare the goods. There will be a date of delivery. Within that date, bill of lading has to be procured. Bill of lading is proof of loading of the goods on the ship. FOB, free on board, loaded, on board shipping bill. Oh, sorry, on board bill of lading, on board, and clean. Clean means the shipment has been loaded on the ship without damage. If it is damaged, the clean word will not be there. But in the LC it is written, the acceptable documents is bill of lading, clean on board bill of lading. Clean on board bill of lading. What is the meaning of this? First of all, the bill of lading should be clean, which means endorsed by the captain of the ship. Because the only person who knows the goods have been loaded on the ship is captain of the ship. So clean word is written by the captain of the ship on the bill of lading, right? And clean on board. On board means that goods have been loaded on the ship. Whether ship has sailed or not, that is not the concern of anybody. That nobody knows. Ship chala, nahi chala, that is a different matter. But the goods have been loaded on the ship and they are clean, which means they are not damaged. So you will get a clean bill of lading. And when I say clean, one is damaged. Second, also it can be there that the bill of lading is beyond the delivery date, which is mentioned in the LC. Then it will become stale bill of lading. Even that is not acceptable. So clean word will not be there. Clean word will not be there for two reasons. Either the goods are damaged when they are loaded, as per the perception of the captain of the ship, or the LC copy is there, and the bill of lading date is beyond the delivery date. There is a delivery date mentioned on the letter, LC copy is there. So captain of the ship will say, or the shipping company, that I will explain to you how it is done later. So captain of the ship will say, it is a stale, right? He will write only three words, either clean, or stale, or dirty. Clean means what? Not damaged and not stale. Stale means maybe clean but stale, date is beyond, and dirty means damaged. And there will be second word, on board. On board means on the ship. So once you get that, so what will be the seller responsibility? To get this bill of lading. And along with invoice, along with packing list, common documents, certificate of origin, insurance certificate, freight certificate, quality certificate. These are the documents which are mentioned in the LC. He will go to the bank, and if it is side LC, confirmed LC, he will get the money. And now, what is the meaning of he will get the money immediately? That I will explain to you. Okay. Or should I explain right now? If it is, see, LC can be of different types. One is the payable at site, which means immediate payment. Second can be usance LC, 15 days, 30 days, 90 days, right? Now, what is the meaning of payable at site? The money has to be paid by the issuing bank. The LC has been advised through advising bank. So, if it is a site LC, the seller will give the documents to the advising bank. But the money is not to be paid by the advising bank because he has not issued the LC. LC has been issued by a bank in the buyer's country. So, what he will do, he will say, no problem, it is payable at site. No problem. I will immediately send these documents to the issuing bank. But one thing he has to do, he has to check the documents also. Why? He has to check the authenticity of the document. Because he is in the same country where the seller is. And he is charging for it. Not as an advising bank, but now he has changed the rule. Now it is called negotiating bank. Now it is called because he is negotiating your documents on behalf of you with issuing bank. He will take charges, negotiating charges. And one of the role of the charges is to check whether the documents are authenticated or not. If they are not authenticated, The problem will not be on the seller. Problem will be between these two banks. Because they are coming from this bank. So this is the authentication part is taken care by this bank. Discrepancy part may be taken care by the issue bank, because if there is a discrepancy, there is some discrepancy in the document. They may not be fake, but there can be discrepancies. Like for example, they are not clean, the on-board word is not written, or there is a mismatch in the description of the goods. That is possible. Or which might not have come to the attention of the negotiating bank. So that can be checked. So if everything is okay, if it is payable at side, so this bank has to make the payment. Now that side payment is 5 working days. 5 working days. What is the meaning of this? You get the bill of lading, all the documents, you go to negotiating bank. Negotiating bank will check the documents, immediately send it to. The moment he receives the document, he has got 5 working days as per UCP 600. As per UCP 500, the issuing bank had 7 days, but now the bank has 5 days. Within 5 days, either he has to make the payment, or he has to issue a rejection letter. In the rejection letter, he has to write down what is the problem, what is the discrepancy. On the legal, proper, as per UCP 600.
To advising bank.
Now he is no more advising bank, he is a negotiating bank. He was advising bank, the LC was open. Now this bank is no more advising bank. Now he is negotiating bank. He cannot negotiate directly with the seller because he is a non-technical person. He will only deal with the professional organization. So he will say, oh, I will issue a letter, rejection letter, within 5 days. So the moment he receives the refusal, what it is called in technical language is refusal notice. Refusal on the basis of these discrepancies. Now, depending on the discrepancy, they may be minor. It can be also minor. There is some spelling mistake in the Sanskrit origin or some mistake, which is easily can be corrected, or there can be a major problem. Suppose there is a major problem. Suppose the bill of lading is not clean. Suppose the bill of lading is not on board. Right? Then it's a major problem, money is not to be paid. So what seller will do? He will contact buyer. Sir, I made a mistake. My shipment was 2 days late. So I could not get clean bill of lading. So what should I do? Now, if the buyer requires those goods, now buyer will try to help. Right? So what buyer will do? Immediately he will fill another form to the bank, giving an undertaking that, sir, I will accept stale bill of lading. I will accept. No problem. 2 days late. No, but he has every right to reject. Buyer. On that affidavit, this issuing bank will also accept. Why? Because ultimately issuing bank has to sell these documents to buyer only. If buyer is accepting it, then what is the problem? But for all this, again he will take some charges. See, bank is a business. He says that you get into all this trouble, you do all kind of hanky-panky and this all absurd documents, and you come to me, I will do everything as per the UCP 600 and I will keep asking for charges. If I am giving you service, I will keep doing it. I will charge issuing bank charges, I will charge amendment charges, I will charge acceptance charges of the discrepant documents, so he will charge. That is his business. Because he deals with documents. Nowhere bank has come across any goods. He's not bothered about the goods. He's only bothered about the documents. But the banks are very confident about their documents. If documents are right, everything is right. That is the game. Clear? So I think I have explained to you.
So what's the irrevocable?
What is the
Irrevocable LC.
irrevocable? Irrevocable means now it is very interesting. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Tell me one thing. Suppose buyer goes to issuing bank and asks for a document to get it. Right? the sanctity of this credit is only when this buyer is out of the business, this whole game. If the buyer can influence this bank to revoke the LC, stop the LC, then what is the meaning? So, what is the meaning of involving issuing by third party? See, if there is a fight between two villages and you have involved the sarpanch of third village as a guarantor, and one village can influence that sarpanch to go in their favor, then what is the meaning of the third party? Right?
This is basically for the betterment of seller.
It is for the benefit of the seller that this LC has been opened. It's like a bullet coming out of the gun, it cannot go back. The bullet it means irrevocable. It means once the bullet has gone from the gun, bullet will do something. Either it will kill somebody or something will happen. But it will not come back to the gun. That is the meaning. Irrevocable means that. But let me tell you one more thing. Under UCP 600, it is automatic irrevocable. Whether you write it or wrong. But under the ones we have, UCP 500, you have to write it that this LC is irrevocable. See, revocable LC has no meaning, actually. Has no meaning. So that's why in UCP 600, they have automatically made it irrevocable. Because it has no meaning. Revocable LC, what is the meaning of revocable LC? Then you don't go for LC. If buyer can revoke the LC by giving the instruction, or the bank can revoke the LC, then what is the guarantee of payment? Got it? So
Standby, sometimes it's written standby LC.
no, standby LC is a bank guarantee. Now let me explain to you what is a standby LC. This is another very interesting method. Payment. It is another interesting payment method. Now what happens? There is a contract between buyer and the seller. Buyer do not want to give an advance. Seller do not want to sell the goods by sending on consignment basis or whatever, that money will come. Right? So what the buyer does? Buyer says, okay, let's do one thing. If we go through bank and open the LC, whole thing, I have to pay issuing charges, then I have to pay advising charges, then there will be some corrections, I have to pay that, then you have to pay negotiating charges. All these charges ultimately will be reflected into the price. All these charges will be reflected into the price of the handicrafts, which is being exported from India, right? So what buyer will say, okay, let's do one. I open a standby LC. One standby LC is there for next 12 months. It can be applied any time. Because we are having shipment, 40 lakh shipment every month, right? So I open 140 lakh rupees standby LC, which is applicable for this month also, next month also. It is applicable, it is there. Suppose you send me the goods and I don't pay within time. Use the standby LC. Otherwise, let it remain like that. Got it? Standby LC is for no use. It is not to be used, but it is to be used in case the buyer defaults on payment. On payment, consignment basis. You are sending the consignment every month, and payment should come by 7th of next month, within 7 days. If the payment does not come, you go to the bank and get the money from this standby LC. So standby LC is nothing but a bank guarantee, right? Even that is irrevocable. Right? But standby LC has another advantage, that instead of paying to the bank 12 times in the whole year, you are paying only one time. Because then LC is there. Right? Otherwise, every month you have to open an LC. So what you are doing, you are having one standby LC, which may be used, may not be used.
Because payment is being done separately. So
Yeah, payment is actually being done
separately.
honestly by the buyer. So until he is honest, it is okay. The moment he becomes dishonest, then standby LC. It's more like a bank guarantee. It's a way of reducing the cost between the buyer and the seller, and to bring down the price of the handicrafts. You give 5% or 10% discount for doing business with standby LC. It's okay. You have safety is there, already there. You know that every month you are going to send 40 lakh rupees worth of goods, and 40 lakh LC is already there. So no problem, right? But you are saving on the bank charges. You have only one LC, but you are doing 12 shipments. Correct? So this is how it is done. Okay. So this part is very clear. Now that is the second part. The issuing bank. What the seller does? Seller supplies the goods to the buyer, and what he does, he put the goods on the ship on board. He gets the bill of lading. He make the invoice. He make the packing list. He make the certificate of origin. All these documents he take to advising bank for negotiation. The advising bank sends this document to issuing bank, and depending on whether they are side LC or user LC, issuing bank will issue either the money or the refusal notice, or in case of user LC, what he will do? In the user LC, he will neither issue money, or if there is no refusal, then he will what should he issue? Can you tell me logically? In case of user LC,
Which LC, sir?
user LC, what will happen? Within 5 days he has to decide, right? So what the issuing bank will do? In user LC, money is not to be sent now, right? Right or wrong? In user LC, where the payment has to be made 15 days, 20 days, 30 days, 90 days, like that, whatever is that. So money has to be paid later. So what bank should send? Issuing bank. What should bank should send within 5 days?
Part of the money. Some part of the money.
No, because money is to be paid later.
Confirmation.
Acceptance letter. The bank has to send acceptance letter within 5 working days under UCP 600. Right? Now, what is the purpose? What is the significance of the acceptance letter?
That whatever documents are okay and
Is okay, accept. But there is another very major significance, economic. Logically, can you tell me what is the significance?
Acceptance will fulfill the contract.
No, acceptance letter will say, if the user has is 30 days, your payment will be made on this date. If it is 90 days, payment will be. But there is a very major significance. That acceptance letter will immediately come. By electronic means, it will come in seconds. Scan copy will be immediately come. With the help of that letter, seller can do bill discounting, or he can go for conversion of pre-shipment credit to post-shipment credit. Without acceptance letter, no bank will do it. Without acceptance letter, do you think the bank will do, negotiating bank will do bill discounting? No. Because he is not sure whether the documents are acceptable or not. With the help of acceptance letter only, bill discounting will be done, or conversion of the pre-shipment credit to post-shipment credit will take place. Simple. Clear? I hope it is clear. If you have any doubt, please ask me. So bank either has to issue money in case of side LC, or has to issue refusal letter, or has to issue acceptance letter. Now, in case of user LC also, it is possible that he may issue refusal letter if there is a discrepancy. Right or wrong? Correct? Simple. Very logical. Okay, so this whole system is, I don't think I need to